Sat Shri Akal, friends. Let us take 10 more questions and learn more about India's system of governance. Please pause the video after every question, mark your own answer first, and only then proceed to listen. If you wish to check the channel out for all these questions at one place and in PDF, please see the link in the description of this video. And do not forget to keep looking at the parallel learning on each slide in the form of some picture or trivia on the right hand side. Make note if you feel like, and spend 2-3 minutes reading about it online later. Let us diversify our knowledge, understanding and wisdom one step at a time. So the first question we have here is, which of the following can be inferred from the principle of collective responsibility of the Council of Ministers? Essentially it is asking, what does it mean, this phrase of collective responsibility? So first statement says all ministers are bound by a decision of the cabinet. Absolutely correct. Essentially what it is asking is, the basic principle of what we say, that the ministers swim together and they sink together, right? So they work as a team. It's not individuals working indifferent from each other. They all work together. It's a collective responsibility. So yes, they have to stay together with the decision of the cabinet, and they also have to defend the decision of the cabinet inside the house and outside the house, right? So if there is a no confidence against the council, then the whole council goes and that is why they all have to defend. So actually both of these are the correct options here, and hence C should be your correct answer. So we go to the next question, and that is about the classical languages that we have. Ministry of Culture provides for this kind of a status. So there are some guidelines issued in 2014 on the Ministry of Culture website. You can check in terms of what is the essential criteria. There's just 4 essential points there. You can check that. So the first language, by the way, that was given the classical status, that was Tamil in the year 2004. And then Sanskrit was given the classical status in 2005. Then after that, sequentially, if you see, you had Kannada in 2008. Then you also had Telugu. Sorry, we already have it here. So Telugu in 2008. Again at the same year. Then you also had Malayalam. Malayalam was given a classical status in the year 2013, and the most recent one in this is the Odia language in 2014. So in total currently you have 6 classical languages in India, though the demand has been there for many more. Also be very clear what happens when a language is given the status of being classical. So for example, you should know that there is a center of excellence that is created. Literary awards are instituted. The University Grants Commission creates professional chairs and awards research projects. There's a very good article. I'm sure if you just Google classical languages, you can learn a lot about them. So just make sure you do that and you understand what is the principle behind them. Anyway, so here all of them are classical languages here. So the next question we have, which of the following departments of the Ministry of Finance is responsible for the preparation of Union Budget? I realize this is actually a repeat question. In one of the earlier videos we have already seen this question, and the answer I'm sure you can recall, though it didn't reflect in the number of people who got the answer correct, that there is a budget division which is in the Department of Economic Affairs. So that is the correct answer. I told you that there are 5 departments in the Ministry of Finance. You should know in 1 or 2 lines the functioning of each of those departments. So our friend here, Baba Amte, you can read more about him, and also Baba Amte's son, Mr. Prakash Amte, is also a social worker, and I would urge to learn that you learn about him, you'll seriously be amazed with the kind of work he's passionate about, right? So please do get to know him more. Next question we have is, which of the following are the functions of the Cabinet Secretariat? I actually wanted you to know the Office of Cabinet Secretariat, what it does. So in case you have not done that, because I know many of you just look at the questions and don't learn, but the best way is you go and know a little bit more. Spend 3, 4, 5 minutes. That's all. Go to the website of Cabinet Secretary, CabSec, right? cabsec.gov.in. You spend some time there. There is a whole lot of detailed information provided there. And Cabinet Secretary, I hope you know, is the senior most civil servant of India. In fact, he's the head of the civil services in India, right? So I just wanted you to know that all these are the functions, especially the last one where it says major crisis situation in the country and coordinating activities, right? So for example, even in the present COVID situation, is being coordinated at the CabSec level. While yes, of course, the orders you would be seeing are signed by the Union Home Secretary. Those are the powers under the NDMA, right? So, however, the whole coordination work is actually through the Cabinet Secretary here. Anyway, so we go to the next question, and that is, Comptroller and Auditor General, the Supreme Audit Institution of India, audits the various departments of the government. Who audits the Comptroller and Auditor General? Again, poor performance, but I mean, this was not really a question which I would say is a test. This is something I realize people may not know. So, just to bring some more clarity about this is an obvious question, that who audits the auditor. So there are independent offices within the Comptroller and Auditor General who audit the various departments once every 3 years. So the correct answer here is A, essentially. However, there is a peer review also done from time to time, once in a few years, by the Supreme Audit institutions of other countries, right? So that also happens once in a while. However, the regular auditing function of the CAG office is within the office of CAG itself. Okay, so we go to the next question. The fundamental object of Panchayati Raj system is to ensure which among the following? Okay, now previous year question. So let's see, people's participation in development. Definitely this is how in fact the whole movement of Panchayati Raj started. If you remember the Balwant Rai Mehta committee also, right? The Balwant Rai Mehta committee, which was nothing but the review of the community development program. And one of the major observations and hence the recommendations based on that report was that we need to involve people at grassroots. People have to take ownership. That is when the projects will become successful. Otherwise, we can keep planning sitting in Delhi or the state capitals, but nothing will be implemented. Perhaps we still need to learn some from these kind of ideas, even though 70 years have passed, or roughly 60 years, 63 years have passed. Anyway, so definitely that is there. Political accountability. Well, this is not really the fundamental object. Political accountability would be there through Lok Sabha, through the state assemblies as well, and also in the Gram Sabha and the Panchayat system. But that is not the main objective of the Panchayati Raj system. So this is not something we will be marking. And democratic decentralization, absolutely. I mean, this is the best that we know, in our country to propagate democratic decentralization to the grassroots level is the Panchayati Raj system. So definitely that is there. So the government should be, decentralized. So it should be as close to the people as possible, if not with the people, right? So that is definitely there. Now the fourth point, you have financial mobilization. Of course, one of the outcome of Panchayati Raj system is that we'll have a state finance commission, local bodies will be there, the state finances will be shared, union finances will also be shared, but that is not a fundamental objective behind it. It's like when you create an institution, of course, finances have to be provided to them. But the thought behind Panchayati Raj system in India is not really about mobilizing finances or things like that. So that is also not actually a point that should be considered here. So first and the third statement is what you should have marked, and just 1/3 of you could do that. So we go to the next question now. The ideal of welfare state in the Constitution of India is enshrined in and this is perhaps the question with the best performance, maximum percentage of correct attempts amongst those who attempted on this channel was in this question. And I think really have to discuss this much because while preamble just sets the ideals and aspirations, fundamental rights being more of the negative obligation of state, they are not the options. 7th schedule is just distribution of power between center and state, the legislative and hence the executive subjects. We are left with directive principles, but understand it also that the directive principles are state policy where there is a positive obligation on the state, that state must provide certain basic social economic rights and basic standard of living, basic standard of health, things like that. So that is where the concept of welfare state comes in. And this gentleman here, usually I keep the photographs black and white, even if they are not, I convert them to black and white. But here I just let it be like that because, this is his trademark jacket, and rarely you'll see him in jackets of other colors. Even others will be very close to what it is, red, or orange. Sometimes he wears other clothes also, so I thought I'll leave it like that. And you should know that this the whole concept of community toilets and the Sulabh has become a synonym of a public toilet. So even if it's not Sulabh Sauchalaya, that's a synonym of that. And so thanks to Shri Bindeshwar Pathak on that. So know more about him, please. Next, which of the following are the discretionary powers of the governor of a state? First, sending a report to the President of India for imposing the President's rule. I'm sure you know that under Article 356, though it's not exactly written, it is a discretionary power, but we understand it is going to be a discretionary power. A Chief Minister is never going to recommend to the governor such things. So it is a discretionary power. Then appointment of ministers. No, this is not a discretionary power. I'm sure we know that it is done on the advice of the Chief Minister. Then the third one says reserving certain bills passed by the state legislature for the consideration of President of India. Absolutely, under Article 200 of the Constitution, governor can reserve any bill, of the state legislature. So this is definitely a discretionary power. Then making rules to conduct the business of the state government. Now, when the rules are to be made as a blanket principle, we know the rules will be made again by the Council of Ministers. They will ultimately make the rules in the name of the governor, of course. So 1 and 3 should be the correct answer. I hope you recognized the gentleman here, Kailash Satyarthi. So anyway, the next question we have, which of the following statements is or are correct regarding the panchayats in India? A decently simple question. The minimum age prescribed for any person to be a member of panchayat is 21 years. Absolutely correct. While for Lok Sabha and the state assemblies, we know the minimum age is 25. For local governments, it is 21 years. It cannot be, the provision says that the 25 should be read as 21 in a way. Then a panchayat reconstituted after premature dissolution continues for the remainder of the period. This actually came as a question in one of the previous year's UPSC exams. Civil service itself, and this is correct that once panchayat is dissolved, the new panchayat will hold its term only for the leftover period of the previous panchayat. So both of these are your correct statements actually. So we move on to the next question, and I hope you realized this gentleman here also, Bharat Ratna, was awarded, Dhundu Keshav Karve. So the last question of today's 10 questions. Which of the following statements are correct regarding the Election Commission of India? Okay, first statement says it calls upon all parliamentary constituencies to elect members to constitute a new House of People on the expiration of the existing House. Well, the statement is wrong, obviously, because and I'll recommend you read this, section 14 of RPA 1951. Please do read this one section, and it will very clearly tell you that it is the President who shall, by notification on such date or dates as may be recommended by the Election Commission of India, right, call upon all parliamentary constituencies to elect members of the House of People. So it is not the Election Commission, it is the President of India. And similarly for the state election, you will see in section 15 it will say the Governor. It is they who call the parliamentary constituencies. Yes, the dates, etc., and all those advices are given by Election Commission of India. Okay, so we learned that here. Then it resolves the disputes relating to the splits or mergers of recognized political parties. Yes, actually, it is only for recognized political parties also. If you know, there is an election symbols order. The election symbols reservation and allotment order of the year 1968, and in that it talks about the EC, Election Commission, being the sole authority to decide on the issues of dispute or mergers. While you should also know that naturally, when you read things like this, a question should come to your head. Then okay, if we are saying recognized political parties, what about the other parties which are registered but unrecognized? So for that you should know that what happens in these cases, that Election Commission usually advises those fighting sections or factions of the parties to resolve the differences internally or to approach the court. Okay, but under the election symbols order, for recognized parties, it's the Election Commission who gets involved here. So yes, third statement is also a correct statement for us. Okay, the performance needs focus here. Again, not difficult areas, these are basics. All right, so today I'll leave you with a concept to learn. There has been question in this area earlier. So the term called social capital. You can pause the video and read, right? And know more also about yourself and think about it. So that's all for this video. I'll take up 10 more questions in the next video. Till then, study well. Thank you very much.